Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Osleys Iglesias versus Vladimir Shishkin fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. I appreciate the members that we've got on there already. There's been plenty of videos that have come as a result of the Patreon. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to get it out. And again, the link will be in the description as always, and I really do appreciate the support. Let's get straight into this one though. So I think this is, a good steady step up for Osleys Iglesias. He is somebody who has been slowly, ticking away, building up a bit of a platform, building up a bit of hype around him. He's still not yet got a big promotion, which is something in which is kind of baffling to me, to be completely honest. I think from what he's done so far in his professional career, the amount of stoppages in which he's been able to get, the way that he's been able to blast through his opposition, and the fact that he has fought on a big top rank show and top rank haven't actually decided to go on to sign him, it is just very interesting to see because, again, he's gotten himself in a good position. I mean, he's IBO world champion, he's defending that belt, he's defended it on multiple occasions now, and it just seems like he's just not quite getting the push enough to be able to get into a massive fight just yet. There is no real rush. Again, like I say, I do actually quite like this fight for Iglesias. I think it is a good stepping stone fight. It's, a fight in which, again, showcases that they're not in a crazy rush to get him into, a world title position or fighting against, the other elite guys in the super middleweight division. But he really is, again, like I say, getting into a good position. And the fact that, he's only 13-0, he is still pretty, been moved pretty quickly. And again, like I say, I think he's just in a great position. He's been going through his opponents with ease. He's had all his fights end in knockout bar one, and again, that's what's creating that hype. He had a busy 2024. This is his first fight in 2025, similar to, Shishkin in that way, his first fight in 2025. But Iglesias, I think, had 3-4 fights in 2024. Again, active that year. And that was definitely his breakout year. He, like I say, got himself in a great position, managed to get himself highlight reel moment where he brutally, quite scarily knocked out Shevchenko in the first round, which, like I say, was something that went viral. Then he fought on a top rank card in Canada. I think he's yet to fight outside of Canada, I believe. Or that's definitely the place where he fights most of his fights, and that's where this fight will be. And like I say, I thought Top Rank was going to work with him. Again, maybe Top Rank aren't really signing a tremendous amount of fighters at the moment, just due to them, having problems with, trying to find a new deal for, broadcasters and things like that. Of course, they're leaving ESPN, and it doesn't seem like there's been any kind of rumors of who they could be with anytime soon. But again, that's a different topic. So maybe that's why they're not signing fighters at the moment. If not, if Top Rank aren't really interested, then I think he could be a perfect signing for Sela. Sela are coming through with the Canelo Crawford events. They've got the likes of, Callum Walsh on their resume now, and that, in their stable. And I feel like, somebody like Osleys Iglesias is exciting. He's new. He's got a decent amount of backing behind him and hype already, but he just hasn't got that promotion. And again, that's what the WBC Grand Prix has been doing, and I think the WBC Grand Prix could lead to a few Sela fighters. Again, Iglesias could easily step in. I feel like His Excellency is definitely aware of somebody like Iglesias, so I think if he just manages to put out another very good performance here against Shishkin, then he could get himself in a real good position. I thought that Iglesias could even fight on the Canelo Crawford undercard, so it is a bit surprising to see that he's not. But he has an opportunity to again make this small event in Canada a viral event again if he is able to deliver a good knockout and a good performance. For Vladimir Shishkin, though, he is an opponent who is like I say, a good step up in opposition. Of course, last time out he fought William Skull, and so he is a former world title challenger, which again, fighting William Skull for the title, it's a bit of a gimme kind of world title challenger. It's definitely not, fighting Canelo and then losing in a close fight, or, losing via decision to Canelo. It's definitely not the same thing, but I feel like it's definitely a loss which has aged well because of how much, William Skull was able to frustrate and annoy Canelo. Again, I think that means that the performance in which Shishkin gave Skull, where he was able to have a bit of success into the latter couple rounds, perhaps had him maybe a little bit hurt at one point in the fight, Shishkin, and was able to stay in there, and I think made the last again, couple rounds a little bit closer, and perhaps was, I think he actually was able to land more shots on William Skull than Canelo was able to in the whole fight, which again, is something I'm sure you got to look out, and obviously Skull was trying to run away and trying to not get hit and really, trying to avoid things when he was fighting Canelo. But again, that's a stat there which you have to give Shishkin credit for, the fact that he was able to land more on Skull than that of Canelo. Again, that's something in which I'm sure hasn't really been talked about much, but I do feel like this fight will definitely play out differently than that fight. Iglesias is a 27-year-old southpaw, and again, has the ability to be able to go on to a high level, in my opinion. And Shishkin is 34, so again, is on the latter side of things, having the things just not going on his favour on paper for him in this fight. But to speak about both fighters that bit more individually, Iglesias leads off his jab well, and I think is able to sneak it under the guard. In his last performance, again, he was able to use that jab and sneak it under the guard and have a bit of success following off that. He's got relatively fast hands, and with the solid timing which he has when he plants his feet, mixing the fast hands with the good timing, it's where he's been able to land quite a few devastating knockouts from. Of course, he carries that high level of power, and he has decent accuracy. I think his accuracy maybe is dropping a bit in some more recent performances, but he still, again, has the accuracy to be able to land well with good time shots. You can tell that he's relaxed. It's not, quite tense and uptight, in which Shishkin can look at times. I think he is becoming a bit more disciplined, a bit less wild at times, and he is maintaining and using his range relatively well. His hands do typically stay high, and that was something early on with Iglesias in some of his, again, earlier fights I was liking. I feel like he is perhaps getting a little bit too comfortable, which is often the problem with prospects that are going and knocking out everybody. They do get a bit comfortable and their hands do begin to drop down a bit, and they do become a bit complacent, but I don't feel like it's quite happening yet with Iglesias, but it might be creeping in a little bit. He has started to mix up his uppercuts into his, game a lot more, and that's been a nice shot, which I saw again in his last fight that was landing nicely. He's got good flowing combinations. He doesn't seem to respect his opponents, which of course can cause problems, and it means that, he could get caught coming in with a big shot, which he's just, again, too relaxed and not caring too much about. But it does also add a more killer instinct side of things, where he's able to walk through stuff to be able to land better and bigger shots. He can stop his momentum with power. If he is on the back foot and his opponent's trying to come forward and gain that momentum, he can, again, time them, walk them onto a shot, stop that momentum. He's got a good solid base, that wide kind of stance that he does possess most of the time, and something in which I've seen with his knockouts, and something again which is quite, not rare to see, but it's not something in which many people pick up upon, and it does seem like he does it on purpose, is the fact that he's often able to land his shots on the back of the ear. That's not saying that it's landing on the back of the head. The back of the ear is a position in which, of course, is a legal shot. It's going around the guard really nicely, and is really kind of clubbing that hook onto the back of the ear. And I think that is how he's able to be able to get as many knockouts in which he's been getting, because he's landing them hooks right onto the back of the ear, which is a real, sensitive spot to land on, near about the temple, and it's a very difficult shot to be able to take and to keep coming forwards from. You could take shots on the chin, a lot of fighters can take shots on the chin and keep walking forwards, but if you land it on the back of the ear, it's again, a much difficult position to be able to handle and to defend against as well, because if you then start to try and cover up behind your ear, then you're just leaving your face open more. And again, it's a position in which not many fighters are able to cover up well. And even if you have a tight guard, it's still, again, like I say, going around that guard. So I think that's something in which Iglesias really does well. Negatives, I suppose, about him. I don't feel like he actually fights walking backwards, going, that well. I think his footwork can be a bit messy at times, and he doesn't really shorten up his shots always tremendously well. He is a wide target, he's a big wide target to land on, and he does square up. Again, I feel like his footwork is predominantly his main kind of focus that needs to be worked upon, in my opinion, and he does stand quite tall as well, but so does Shishkin, to be fair. I think he headhunts quite a lot. There's very minimal body work, especially in his last performance, and I think in general, obviously, we haven't seen a tremendous amount of him because of the amount of knockouts he's been able to get, but I do think that he does, headhunt, and again, he could go to the body really nicely if he was able to work it together better. He isn't really able to actually push you off that well. I don't think his physicality is that good. Saying how big of a wide presence he is, I don't actually think he is that physically strong, or is at least able to utilize that well in the boxing ring. His speed of footwork is poor. His head movement is limited. Getting out of the corner was something in which it does seem like he has problems with, and he does kind of leave himself in the corner when he is backing up in straight lines. He perhaps is relying on his power a bit too much. And again, like I've talked about, getting too comfortable. To speak about Shishkin as a fighter, he is a mid-range type of fighter in my opinion. I think he wants to try and lead off his jab, especially early on, maybe into the later rounds. He'll try and rug it out a little bit and get a little bit in close and, do a little bit of work there. But I think his best of work does come from mid-range. I think against Skull, maybe he was fighting out to mid-range a bit too long, and that's where Skull was able to pick up quite a lot of rounds, and when he did get in close with Skull, he was able to have a bit more success, but it was a bit messier work that he was landing. He keeps his shape well, which is good, but at the same time, he is very tense when he's keeping that shape, which does leave his chin open. And like I say, he is just standing like a bit of a kind of a statue when he is just stood there in that position. He isn't really that agile. He doesn't move. He's not really flowing with his movements that well. But I mean, neither is Iglesias really. He does throw with purpose, and he does chop down with his punches. He's hitting downwards. It can generate more power, but it does work better against smaller opposition, which Iglesias isn't. He does, again, like I say, tries to work off his jab. He can double it up and pair it up nicely when he wants to, and he can, offer half decent head movements, and he will kind of lean off his back foot from punches. So he is, avoiding punches at, kind of well, and he's able to counter a little bit off that. Maybe a little bit better head movement than what I've seen, at least in recent times, from Iglesias. He keeps trying to come forwards, and he's definitely got a consistent work rate. It is quite a minimal work rate for the most part until the later rounds where he is upping that a bit. And again, in that last round, I feel like he can generate a lot better work rate and keep throwing a bit more, and again up that gear a bit more into the last round, which is something in which, if it does go that long, then Iglesias hasn't had to deal with yet. So it could be interesting to see how that goes. And of course, he does carry power as well when he does use it. Negatives about him, I think he can be quite hesitant and, standing tall and being a bit tense and shaky with his movements as well, which is what we can see sometimes. And I think he definitely will respect Iglesias quite a lot in this fight, which definitely I don't think will end up as a good thing if he is becoming shaky and tense. I think it can lead to him getting knocked out even sooner. he's got minimal output. He can wait on the front foot too long, and that's when he can get caught off the back foot. Even if he does, back up Iglesias, he does get moved with punches. He doesn't really deal with hand speed that well. He can get beaten to the punch, and he's not very fast himself. His punch variety is limited. He does headhunt in his own right. Maybe goes to the body a little bit more than Iglesias, but again, he does still headhunt, and he does perhaps rely a little bit too much on his jab. A lot of the rounds against Skull, he was just going for the jab, which, I've seen fighters win fights from the jab alone, but it would have been nice to see when he actually did, like I say, into them later rounds, start pairing things up a little bit more. Again, he was having more success. He can stay in the same gear too long, he can be made to follow, and he can get caught with uppercuts with his chin in the air. That's what Skull found was working best for him, and that was, definitely having success with against Shishkin. Who do I think is going to win? I think that Osleys Iglesias is going to be able to win via TKO in round 5. Again, if he backs him up, Shishkin, then I think Iglesias could even just load up, which isn't really something I'd recommend, but if he loaded up and landed a big uppercut, then I could really see him causing some damage on Shishkin. And if he is tense early on and, waiting too long to engage Shishkin, then I think that's just going to lead into Iglesias' hands. And realistically, I don't really see a tremendous amount, unless it goes into them later rounds, that Shishkin can do to really trouble Iglesias in this fight. So again, like I say, I think Iglesias is going to be able to stop him relatively early on. Then who he can go on to fight next? I mean, if somebody like a Sela come in and pick him up and, or His Excellency just sees him and wants to get involved with him, the winner of Mbili vs Martinez maybe could go on to fight Iglesias. Maybe it's a bit of a step down for Mbili, but Mbili's realistically not got a tremendous amount of options because it looks like the Canelo fight isn't going to happen for a while. So maybe he'd be willing to fight someone like an Iglesias who is ranked highly. So again, that maybe could happen. If not, then a William Skull himself. Again, that could be a good option. Of course, former world champion. That could be good. And if he was able to have a better fight than what Canelo had against him, so then maybe that raises Iglesias' stock even more. If he's able to knock him out, that could really raise his stock because he is a difficult fighter to be able to deal with, William Skull. But I don't think that would sell that well, so maybe that would be on a bit of a, again, smaller show. Or Rescindes, of course, went on to beat Caleb Plant and is WBA interim champion. That could be a good way to get him into a bit of a world ranked position. It seems like Jamal Charlo doesn't care about the belts, he only cares about the big fights, so he doesn't want to fight Rescindes. I think he would rather fight Caleb Plant still, so that leaves the opportunity there for somebody to fight for an interim belt, and perhaps, Iglesias could come in and swoop in and try and take that. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.